Hi and welcome to Magic Numbers. This is episode number 135, and today we're going to be diving a bit deeper in Duskmourn because we have almost 2 weeks of data clocked on 17lands.com, and 2 weeks of data is quite a lot. We're slowly getting into the also much more refined data because at least 40% of that data comes from the week 2 when people start to know what they're doing, so the quality becomes much higher. And today we're going to be talking about which are the right cards for the right decks, focusing on commons and uncommons because these are the basic building blocks of your decks. And we're also going to be talking about what do top players do slightly differently, what do top players have better results with, proportionally, of course, and trying to figure out why is that so. And also, this is something for people of all kinds of ability levels, maybe some specific advice that will be targeted to your win rate group. Something that is not usually happening in other content because they try to be universal. I try to a bit dive into what makes more sense when you're playing at a 50% win rate compared to when you're playing at a 60% win rate, and how to maybe slightly abuse that knowledge and how to use it to improve as a Magic player. Before we go into that, thanks to the sponsors, which is Bulkbox. Thank you very much for that. mtgazone.com. And of course, my adorable patrons whose ranks have shrunk this week. So if you think that a patronage is something you can afford, please join the ranks because we need to increase those numbers and not decrease them. Also, just to let you know, I'm still doing the coaching. It's going well. I'm having more and more students, but I'm enjoying it so much that more students wouldn't hurt. If you think that is something for you, give it a try. And if you go to join the Patreon at the highest level, you will have like a session a month on that. So that's maybe a good deal that you can consider. All right, let's move in. We'll start with the preamble, and this time is topical. This is something I noticed, well, for the last couple of sets at least. Knowing the right home for cards makes or breaks the format for you. Often the win rates drop when players just look at the raw 17 lands data and put the cards based on that into their decks, rather than trying to figure out what is going to be working better in a particular home and maybe worse in a particular home. And this is maybe like the most necessary level up for you if you are a player that is, around maybe 50% win rate or there and about. The level up of figuring out that card can be good, but it does not mean that it's necessarily equally good in every single archetype. Because from that level up, you can move on later into more context that there are sub archetypes within color pairs where one card can be really great in one version of the deck, but not in the other. And that goes much, much deeper than that. Today, we're going to look at just the color pair win rates of each card and how do they compare with the average win rate of the archetype. And that is not a full dive because, in a perfect world, you would like to also isolate the data from those sub archetypes and compare which cards are doing particularly bad in those sub archetypes. But there is not enough data to get that kind of level of granularity right now. So we're just going to look at the color pairs. And from there, you can get some general trends. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind, and this is linked to those subtleties within the color pair, is that the fact that card A is really good in Boros doesn't mean that the card A is going to be automatically really good in every single build of Boros that you make. Luckily for the beginner drafters, normally when you start drafting, your decks, your builds will be relatively safe and standard. You will be probably making some mistakes in building them, but at least the theme should be generally close to whatever theme is the design team putting into the format. It's usually a bit later when you get a bit more comfortable drafting that you're going to start going a bit off piste and trying to build those weird builds of archetypes. That doesn't say that it's the same for everyone, but a general trend will be like that. So you are quite safe with those evaluation because these will be the mainstream evaluation. Normally those niche sub builds are a smaller fraction, so they will not have that much impact on the data. Okay, first a bit about the metagame evolution, and well, first things first. We started with around 2/3 of the decks being two-colored, and around 22% of the decks being two colors with a splash, and around 7.5% three-color decks in the week one. And those numbers have changed slightly, but those slight changes are something that I like to monitor. We dropped from 67.5 to 64.65% play rate for the two-color decks. That's a small but noticeable reduction. And splashing increased slightly from 22% to 23.6%. Also, three-color decks increased from 7.4 to 8.6%. And that tells me that as the format evolves, people tend to splash a bit more. And I think that they also figured out how to splash slightly better. But that's just a feeling based on the small shifts in the win rates, basically. Since we're going to be talking about the top players, 17 Lands divides their data into 3 tiers of players that do include the bottom, mid, and top tier. Top tier players are the ones that have a win rate on average of around 60%. And for those players, not much has changed really. It was 65% of two-color decks. Now it's 64.5%. As you can see, these players were already splashing from week one at the rate that the general population is doing. They were playing 24.7% of the decks with two colors and splash. Now it's 24.3%, so really that's not significant a change. And three-color decks were 6.8%, now they're 7.4%, so slight increase. And I do think it's a significant increase. And I think that it's mainly driven by people playing Timur and Junt decks and figuring out that those color combinations are particularly viable in this format. And you can see that from the actual color per win rate. In terms of the metagame evolution for the color pairs, because as you can see, 65% two-color decks, 25% two colors and a splash. That makes in total 90% of the decks are two-color, so makes sense to focus on those. We have seen increases in play rate of the two most popular color pairs after week one, Boros and Azorius. They were at 15% and 16% of the metagame respectively. Now they are 16.6 and 17.4%. So that's a solid increase. Also, they were the top two win rate archetypes at the same time. The order on this graph from Boros, Azorius, Simic to Orzhov at the end is based on the week one win rates for the general population. So Boros was the most winning, Orzhov was the least winning. That's why I ordered those like that, because we will see the win rates later, so that there is some kind of rhyme and reason. As you can see, also there was a good correlation between what is good and what was being played across this time, because top 4 archetypes were also top 4 most drafted one. 5th most drafted archetype was the 5th most winning one, and the 5 that were winning a bit less were, also drafted a bit less. So there is a good correlation between what 17 Lands users are drafting and what is winning. So the top 2 have increased by quite a large margin. Simic, which was 3rd, increased by slightly less, by 0.5 percentage point. Now it's at 13%. Gruul, which was 4th most drafted, was 12. Now it's 12.8. So yeah, about a percentage point increase. Golgari dropped from 9.8 to 9.4%. Rakdos increased from 7.5 to 8. And there's been drops in the 4 bottom archetypes. Selesnya, Izzet, Dimir, and Orzhov. They all dropped by roughly 1 percentage point, maybe a bit more for Selesnya. Same graph, but for the top players, and we see very similar trends. Increases in Boros and Azorius. Here, Simic stays roughly the same. Gruul increased by roughly a percentage. Golgari had a big drop from 10% to 8%. So that's quite sizable. But I do think that a part of that drop is not because people play less Golgari, but it's because some Golgari decks became Junt or Sultai. So there was a 3rd color added to those Golgari decks. That's why we see the drop in them. They are predominantly Golgari, but maybe a splash of red became 4 red cards, and that already is quantified by 17 lands as the 3-color deck, which will not be covered in this particular statistic. I didn't actually follow up on that, and I didn't check the 3-color combinations because, trust me, I had a whole lot of data to look at for this slide, for these slides, and we will have enough. But I'm pretty sure I can confirm that this is the reason. There's also been quite a sizable increase in drafting Rakdos. It went from 8.4 to 9.5, and drops in Selesnya, Izzet, Dimir, and Orzhov, albeit the drop in Dimir was small, but Dimir was also almost not drafted in the week 1 already. And Izzet, the drop was from 7.6 to 7.4. So again, it's not a statistically significant drop of any sort. It's probably dead even. Top players do draft Izzet more than you would expect from an archetype that has such a potentially low win rate. Rosemary T, I thank you very much for the raid, by the way. I do appreciate it ever so greatly. In terms of the win rates, generally what you see in week 2 is a slight drop in generic win rate of all the decks. And we are observing that all of the archetypes almost saw a drop in win rate by sometimes by half a percentage point. Like in case of Boros, it dropped from 58 to 57.5. Azorius dropped from 57.6 to 56.8, so roughly 1 percentage point. Similar Simic, 56.8 to 55.9, 1 percentage point drop. Same with Gruul, 1 percentage drop from 56.7 to 55.9. Golgari stayed roughly the same, 54.9 to 50.4.7. But Rakdos did see an increase. And I think that this is something worth noticing, that people have figured out how to build Rakdos. Also, maybe it became slightly more open because we lose a lot of those, what I call start of the format drafters, the people who draft in the first 4 days. And they tend to draft red and black more frequently than the general population. It will be like a small trend that Rakdos is a bit more overdrafted in the first week. But Rakdos increased from 55 to 55.5. Small increase, but a sizable one, and also against the general trend, which is something you need to take into account. Like if every color combination drops by a percentage point and Rakdos increases by half, that's bucking the trend. That's something that I'm already instantly noticing and noting in my notebook that, probably Rakdos is slightly more open. So if you're feeling like dipping your toes in the Rakdos deck, maybe that's the moment. Then we have like Selesnya dropped by half a percentage point. Izzet increased ever so slightly, but it's like from 52.1 to 52.2. It's still lagging way behind. Dimir, on the other hand, had a huge drop, despite already being like almost at the end. So it dropped from 52 to 50.5. And Orzhov stayed roughly the same, 51.78, that kind of level. It's just still 9th highest win rate of all the color pairs, but it's not 10th, so it gained 1 rank while not really improving or decreasing. So generally that would mean that apart from Dimir, probably the gap between the archetype narrowed down. And it was already a very balanced format in week 1. Now it's even more balanced, and there's very little difference, like 2 percentage points win rate difference between Boros and Rakdos in 5th spot. So that's not much. And I would still say that Boros, Azorius, Simic, Gruul, Golgari, Rakdos are top 6 tier sort of 1.5 decks. And then Selesnya, Izzet, Dimir, and Orzhov are tier 2. Now we can look at the same thing for the top players. And here the changes are even more drastic, but very similar in their nature. Like first thing, if you look at this graph, you see Dimir dropped from 57 to 54.6. So like almost 3 percentage points drop, 2.5 to be precise. That's a big drop in general. Boros and Azorius, the top archetypes, dropped from 62.6, 62.2 to 61.3, 60.9. So again, 1.3 percentage point drops for each of them. Simic stayed the same at around 60%. Gruul stayed roughly the same. It was 59.6, now it's 59.3. There was a big drop in Golgari win rate, 59 to 57.4. And again, we see Rakdos increasing. Again, in this subset of players with highest win rates, Rakdos jumped from 58.9 to 59.9. And that actually makes it, jump from being the sixth most winning archetype into being the fourth most winning archetype. Again, those differences are relatively small. But when we look at the top players, it's a slightly different picture. Instead of having 6 tier 1.5 archetypes, here we have 5 because Golgari's drop was so significant. So now we have, Boros, Azorius, Simic, Gruul, and Rakdos as just tier 1, with very little differences. The sort of 2 percentage points between them as previously. And then we have maybe Selesnya and Golgari at 57 as a tier 2. And then Izzet, Dimir, Orzhov tier 3 at a 54.5% win rate. And mentioning Selesnya, top players are having now 57% win rate with that. It was 56.4. So there is a slight improvement. Again, because it's bucking the trend, I would be taking notice of that. I think that it comes to abandoning the survival strategy and moving on to just drafting good white and green cards, which there's plenty of, and utilizing them in a sort of like aggressive to mid-range kind of shell. And I'm not saying you can't put a survival card in your Selesnya deck. It's just that you shouldn't build it around it. And also, if you do, maybe you have to think about other tools that allow you to use those cards efficiently. And I will be specifically talking about one particular card that we may be missing as a good Selesnya card that you will always have access to. Talking about that, we talked in the preamble that it's important to put right cards in the right decks. And if you put the right cards in the right decks, your win rate is going to automatically improve, because that also will, as a corollary, mean that you don't put the bad cards in the wrong deck. And here I will be looking at each color's commons and uncommons. And I'm going to be looking at a simple metric. I'm going to look at the win rate of the card, and I'm going to deduct a color pair win rate from them. And then if that number is high, it means that the card is improving the deck because its win rate is higher than the color pair's generic win rate. If the number is low, or negative actually, it means that this card makes the deck slightly worse because its win rate is lower than the win rate of the archetype. It's not a perfect comparison, but it's, I think, the best way of figuring out which cards go in which decks, so it's worth looking at it. There are some minor caveats that are linked to that. Cards are not working as individuals, so there will be a lot of noise in this data, treated with a bit of cautiousness. Some cards have smaller sample sizes, are not played as often. Some cards will be good in specific sub builds, and you will not see that in this generic data of the color pair. So there's a couple of caveats going on there. But outside of that, I think that just looking at those numbers when I was analyzing them, it made me understand the format so much better just by preparing the seminar. So just to give you an example, here we're looking at the white commons, and I aligned them starting from Trapped in the Screen, which is improving every single white deck that it's in. Blue-white decks win 2.2 percentage points more when they have Trapped in the Screen. White-black decks win 2.2 percentage points more when they have Trapped in the Screen. White-red decks win 1 percentage point more when they have Trapped in the Screen, and white-green decks win 3.8 percentage point more when they have Trapped in the Screen. Trapped in the Screen, obviously, the Oblivion Stone at common in the set. And that's how I sorted the cards. I sorted the ones that have, on average, the highest improvement or for the decks that the card is in. And Living Phone is my red lantern here. That's the card that has the biggest harmful effect on putting that card in your decks. So blue-white decks that put Living Phone in have like 7.1 percentage points lower win rate. Not the blue-white decks, but I mean, when you have Living Phone in blue-white decks has a win rate lower by 7 percentage points than blue-white decks in general. So clearly, that's a card that you don't want to be putting in your specifically blue-white decks. But even like in white-black, it lowers the win rate by roughly 3 percentage points. In white-red, roughly 5 percentage points, and in white-green by roughly 5 percentage points, meaning that the card is just bad. 3 mana for a 2/1 that has a death trigger in the world where even if opponent feels compelled to kill it, they might use something that exiles it, like Trapped in the Screen or Scorching Dragonfire, and you won't even get your trigger, so just spend 3 mana on a vanilla 2/1. It's just not good. But okay, that just to show you what is the order of the cards. It goes from the one that improves the most generically in all decks in the color to the one that is the most detrimental. And here we have some of the cards. Trapped in the Screen is the first one, as I already told you. Unsettling Twin is the second one. And it has a good effect. When you look at those numbers, you should treat anything that is above -1 percentage point as a decent card. Decreasing the win rate of a deck by 1 percentage point as a common is not a terrible thing. Because commons are, of course, the weakest part of the decks, which means that their impact will be often moderately negative, but you still won't get enough uncommons and rares to have a deck exclusively made out of those. So you need to settle for the cards that have that kind of -1. If you go lower than -1, like -2 percentage points, that probably is a card that is sort of detrimental for your deck already, like actively, and you probably should want to more actively avoid it, or you want to make sure that this is your like 23rd playable. All the other cards should be better than that. And there's not many commons that will fulfill those kind of criteria. This is the problem of that set that I realized very quickly when I started analyzing this data. Those commons in Duskmourn are flat level and not so great. So this is why I told you that latest episode of Limited Level Ups should be a good listen that accompanies it, because Alex, without touching bloody data, came to the same conclusion, which is why I really hate him, because he can figure those things out just by sheer brain power and experience and observation skills, and I have to use the numbers to lean on. I still get there in the end, so joke's on him. But he had this very same insight that this is the format where you shouldn't lean on commons. And this was the thing that I realized when I was analyzing this data. Why am I not doing so as well in this format as I normally do in other ones? And this is, I often have basically pauper decks in Limited. I have like maybe 1 rare, maybe 2 rares, some uncommons, and lots of commons, because I know exactly which common goes where, and I can make those commons work. And in this format, I tried that, and I couldn't make those commons work. And I was wondering why. I mean, I'm putting those things. They are good commons for that particular deck. Then I look at the data and I said, oh, well, I stand corrected. These were not good commons for those decks. I probably should rethink my strategy. And Alex suggested find open lanes based on the uncommons and try to get as many of the impactful uncommons as you possibly can, because you can get more of them because we're playing play boosters. If you find an open lane, you'll get enough of them. And I totally agree with what he said there. So let's look at the top commons apart from Trapped in the Screen. Unsettling Twins is the second most improving common in white. And it's great in white-black, 3.8 percentage points. And we will be looking at more black cards, but spoiler alert, it looks to me like if you want to make a white-black deck that is moderately successful, anything that manifests dread is amazing in those decks. And this is not just a fluky number that Unsettling Twins are so much better than the average white-black deck is. I think that anything that manifests dread in white-black is a premium, because you really want to see those 2 top cards and you want to put one of those into your graveyard. So that improves white-black decks by 3.8%. It's also good to very good in white-red and white-green, 0.7 increase and 1.3 increase. And it's still decent in white-blue, where it's like minus 0.5. So it's within this, it's above the -1 that I was telling before. So fine. And then the third best white common in terms of how it improves the decks is Ceased from Slumber. And this is the card I completely missed in the first days of the format. Then I started playing it, and now I'm definitely putting it in any deck that I will have. It's like uncuttable white common in any color combination. And at best in white-black, because it allows you to survive early game where you're developing your graveyard and ramping the mana to the 5 mana reanimation spells. There it improves by 1.3 percentage points. It's still good in white-green, 0.7, but keep in mind, of course, it's easier to improve decks that have low win rate, like white-black and white-green. And it has a slightly negative impact on white-red and white-blue, but still within the framework of what I was talking. So in white-blue, it's minus 0.3. In white-red, it's minus 1.1. That's absolutely fine. And we have another card, Fear of Surveillance. That's the 2-mana enchantment creature, 2/2 vigilance, and when it attacks, it surveils. This one is decent in white-green and in white-blue. In both cases, 0.2 percentage points increase. White-blue, obviously, enchantment synergies, that helps. It's still okay in white-black and white-red, minus 0.8, minus 0.9. But you can see that surveilling part, you would think it's more important in white-black. It's still fine. It's just not amazing. It decreases the actual win rate compared to, generic win rate of the color pair. Then we have Fear of Immobility. That's the 5-mana 4/4 that when it ETBs, it taps something, puts a stun counter on it. This card is probably like okay in 3 of the archetypes. In white-blue, an enchantment creature that helps. In white-black and white-green. In all 3 of those, it decreases the win rate by roughly 1 percentage point, which is fine, as I said. In white-red, it's a bit more sus. Minus 2.1 is not what you'd be looking for. So this should be maybe a filler card in those decks when you don't have anything better, but you should aim at not having to put it in your white-red decks, basically. Yeah, Ceased from Slumber is a bit of a surprise, but when you start thinking about it, I'm commenting on the comment from chat. When you start thinking about it, the 2-mana instant speed destroy the top creature is not playable because sometimes you're an aggressive deck and no one will attack you, and that's why it rarely finds a home. But the 5-mana buyout clause, when you can just destroy anything, is actually something that aggressive decks would want to do, because if they go 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop removal, that's usually a good carve out. And then it doesn't matter that much that it costs 5. While if you're a bit of on a back foot, it can save your Heine even in an aggressive deck and can help you turn the corner and you being starting to be an aggressor. So because of the dual function, that card naturally becomes better. And I missed it during the set review. I didn't think that it might be good in that. I will definitely pay more attention to that in future sets. And especially because the 2-mana version of the Ceased from Slumber is a really good version of it, because it does kill the creature before it attacks. So it's an instant speed. Sometimes this 2-mana thing is sorcery speed, and then it's not so great. Not to mention, there are some ways of tapping creatures. Not to mention, there are some creatures that tap for different reasons. So all of that adds up. Then we have a jump scare. That card is pretty good in white, red, and white, green, where it's basically neutral, so 0% change, and maybe even 0.4 in white, green. And it's significantly worse in blue-white, minus 1.7, which is sort of like on the edge of that threshold that I was talking about. So it's probably a filler card there, very filler. And it's actively bad in white-black, where it's minus 4.3. And why? Well, obviously, white-black main plan is not super aggressive. And because it's not super aggressive, jump scare, a trick that gives +2/+2 in flying, is not really what you'd be wanting to do. And similar, Friendly Ghost, a card that I'm pretty high on. I played it in white-red decks, and it was very good. I played it in the white-green deck, and it was very good in there as well. That's the 4 mana 2/4 flyer that when it ETBs, it gives +2/+4 to a creature. This is a good enabler for the survival decks. This is the thing that you want to be doing. You make your card into you make your 2/2 into a 4/6, then you can swing with it, no problem. You don't have to worry about it. It will do its damage, and it will stay tapped to your first main phase like 95% of the time. That's why Friendly Ghost is a good card in there. Improves the win rate by 1.4. So this is like the enabler for the white-green deck if you're having some survival synergies. It's also good in white-red, helping you to deal some damage and push it through. 0.5% increase in the win rate, but it's pretty bad in both blue-white and white-black. Minus 3.3 in blue-white and minus 4.8 percentage points in white-black. Again, very not on plan for the white-black deck. And this is one of the reasons why white-black is not the winning archetype. So many white commons are not going to be on plan for that deck because it does a very different thing than all the other white-black decks, which try to be either grindy aggro or aggro tempo or mid-ranged aggro. And white-black is sort of odd. And because of that, it just loses so many of the good cards which were designed to help those aggressive strategies. Then we have Grand Entryway and Elegant Rotunda. I think one of the most overplayed cards in the format. This card has bad numbers in all the archetypes except for blue-white, where it's actively good. Blue-white, it's like minus 0.4 percentage points change, which is fine. Again, above that minus 1 percentage point that I talked about. But in all others, it's like -2, -3.5, -5. That's not great. So you should avoid it in the other archetypes. Then we have Hardened Escort. And that card, again, it's on the threshold in white-green. So fine in white-green decks. That's the 2/4 that when it attacks, it gives something +1/+0 and indestructible. Again, great enabler for the survival strategies when you have them. But it's like atrocious in blue-white, like minus 5.4 percentage points. That's really bad. White-black minus 3.6, white-red minus 2.5. So they probably should avoid those in those decks. Like maybe like at a stretch you can put it in your white-red deck, but there are just so many betters. Like so far we have seen 7 commons that were better than Hardened Escort in white-red deck. So you can find something, and that's just white commons. I'm not talking about we didn't talk about red yet. Then there's Acrobatic Cheerleader, and that's probably one of the bigger traps of the format. Even in white-green, which technically cares about survival, it has minus 2.6, and it only goes worse from that. It -3 in white-red and white-blue, -4 in blue-white. Just probably avoid. Same with Cult Healer, -3, -4.5, -5, -3, and in the color pairs, that's not good enough. Then we arrive at an interesting card, which has a very low impact, so a negative impact, but it's concentrated in 2 colors. Emerge from the Cocoon, the 5-mana reanimation spell that gains 3 life. That's like -7% in blue-white and almost 9% in white-red. Just don't even think about putting this card in those decks, unless you have like a super special build, which I hope you will share with me. But it actually does actively good in white-black. You wouldn't, unsurprisingly, this is the white-black card. It's supposed to be a reanimator, but this shows that actually the reanimator strategy somewhat works. It's not a good strategy because white-black has a generally low win rate, but Emerge from the Cocoon is good, so that's probably what you should be doing in white-black. And now you have to just work on making the best version of that deck, and maybe by putting all the right cards, you're going to improve it. Maybe additional knowledge that Manifest Dread is good in white-black will help you to push it through, and it won't be this 54% win rate archetype, but maybe 56% win rate archetype, and then it becomes okay, playable. But to my surprise, it's also not terrible in white-green, where it's only minus 1.3 percentage points. So that's cool. Probably, you might have some land cyclers in there. You might that you can reanimate. You might have some big survival payoffs that usually die to removal on site, and you never get value from them. But late in the game, you get the Cocoon. You reanimate them, and maybe your opponent doesn't have a second way of dealing with them, and then it becomes decent. So at least something to try out. Emerge from the cocoon in white-green decks. Numbers say it's not terrible, minus 1.3, so that on the border of that -1 that I was telling about. Then we have Shepherding Spirits, and that card, this is the Line Cycler in white. That card is terrible in blue, white, and white, red. Just ignore it. And like meh in white, black, -2. So at the edge of being put in there. Maybe if you have like problem with finding enough reanimation targets, maybe you can play it then. But try to find better reanimation targets, definitely, because -2 is not impressive by any stretch, and -3 in white-green, again, not impressive. Possessed Goat is somewhat okay in white-black. That's the 1 mana that you can spend 3 mana to discard something, and it becomes a 4/4 demon. It works with the Unholy Annex. You will be having a demon on board, and you will drain opponent rather than paying 2 life for drawing extra card. But it's really, really bad everywhere else, like -9.3% in white-blue, -5 in white-red, -3.6 in white-green, and -1.7 in this white-black. So passable there. And then Living Phone, we talked about it. It's just bad everywhere. Just don't play that card, please. Right. To the uncommons. These will be stronger. And there are 3 uncommons that are just universally good. Sheltered by the Ghost, the 2 mana aura that exiles something, gives the creature +1/+0 lifelink and ward 2 for some reason. That's just great. 6 percentage point increase in white-blue, 6 in white-red, 8 in white-green, and only 2.5 in white-black, mainly because white-black doesn't have like powerful aggressive strategy creatures, so it's not as good in there, but it's still great. 2.5, that's better than almost every common was already. And 6 is just unprecedented for commons, so that's like premium uncommon. Just always pick it. It's almost always the first pick also. Optimistic Scavenger is the second one, 6.4 in white-blue. That's just like a premium pick for that archetype. Like if you have 2 of those, you just like play on a different level, basically. And then it's still good in white-black, 1.8 improvement, white-red 3.5, white-green 2.4. It's good in every white deck. It's just amazing in white-blue. So when you first pick it and blue is not flowing, don't despair. You should be able to build a deck where it's okay. And obviously, if you don't have enough enchantments, just don't put it in your deck, and that's also fine. You know when you pick this card that is a super high upside, but Jesus Christ, that's what I have to deal with. God, English house spiders are just monsters. It jumped on me. Okay, I'll let it live in peace and catch my flies. That was definitely a jump scare. Bastard. That definitely is. The spiders in UK are just jumping on you. I don't know why. Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm not going to talk with Australians, but the fact that you are always living in fear of them and prepared that when you open the toilet, you first shine a light in there and search for something. For me, it happens once every 2 years. Okay. And also, I don't kill them, unlike the Australians who probably burn the whole house just to get rid of the thing. They're, in the end, benign, just creepy. Okay. That was very much on theme of Duskmourn, so I'm going to leave it in. But I'm going to move to the Split Skin Doll, which is a great card. Again, every single white deck wants to have it. Around 2-3 percentage points increase in blue-white, blue-red, white-red, and white-green. And almost 6 percentage points increase in... come on, go away from me. I can't remove it from the house because they just die, I heard. So I don't want to kill it. But I just don't want it to walk on the table that is full of stuff when I'm streaming. Okay. 6 percentage points increase split skin doll in white black. It seems that this is exactly what you want to be doing, because you can play a 2-drop that also promotes your plan very often. So you cast it on turn 2, you draw a card, you discard your reanimation target, and one thing that you accomplished, something that the goat would need, like just discarding a card, paying a lot more mana, and this does it all in one. It's perfect, and actually you probably actively want to play it as your first creature so that you can discard something. And if you don't have a reanimation target in hand, you can engineer a turn where you just draw a card, which is also fine for you. Then we have Exercise, a card that has really good numbers. I was surprised how good this card is, and it sometimes goes pretty late. That's the removal that can remove the destroy enchantment, artifact, and a large creature. 3 percentage points increase in win rate in white black and white green. 2 percentage points increase in white red, and slight minus 0.6 decrease in blue white. This is still more than acceptable, but it's just that blue white has so many good blue auras already that will do the same kind of oh, it's exile. Yeah, it does exile. The exiling part is, yeah, exiling part is not non-trivial, because sometimes exiling an enchantment creature against the delirium deck rather than killing it is a big difference in how quickly they will reach the delirium and start overrunning you. So yeah, that's very important. So yeah, in blue white it's not as good, because you have the unable to scream, you have the top enchantments, and all those things do similar things as Exercise, so it's more redundant in there basically, and you can get those same things at common in blue, in unable to scream. Still good though. Then we have Shard Mage's Rescue, aura that gives hexproof and +1/+1. Hexproof for one turn. It doesn't give permanent hexproof. That would have been sick. Still does one turn hexproof. That's basically like a version of a Snakeskin Veil. And because it's an aura, unsurprisingly, really good in white blue. 2.4 percentage points increase in the win rate. Really good in white green, 2.7 percentage points increase in the win rate. So these are the two premium decks for that card. It's still solid in white black, basically at 0. And in white red, it's slightly less, minus 1.3. So it can be this kind of fringe playable in there. But because it's an uncommon, you probably have to sacrifice a good pick for that. So you should be trying to pick something more suitable for your white red strategy. Something more suitable for your white red strategy, like Glimmer Seeker, the 3/3 with survival. That if you don't have a Glimmer, if it survived the combat and is tapped on your second main phase, you get a 1/1 Glimmer. And if you already have a Glimmer, then you draw a card. That card has 1.3 improvement in white red. It's even better in white green, the survival deck. So it should be good in there. 2.1. And in both blue white and white black, it's basically on par. The 3 mana 3/3 body is solid, and you can get some value out of it at some stage, which is not terrible. Then we have Fear of Abduction. That's the 6 mana 5/5 flyer. When it enters, you exile a creature of yours and of theirs. Oh wait, no, you exile yours as a casting cost, and theirs at enters, which is very important for a reanimation deck, because then you just exile theirs. And when it dies, the drill, those things come back. Solid in white green, 1.8% improvement. Solid in white blue, white black, 0.3, 0.8. Decent in white red, and minus 0.7. There, the problem is the 6 mana cost of that thing. 6 mana is a lot for white red decks. Doesn't always work. You don't want to play games that generally last that long, even almost. But still, you can put it in those decks probably quite easily. 0.7 is not a big decrease. Minding that you don't want to sacrifice super high picks for this card. Then we have cards that are more not as uniform. These could go in basically all the white decks with small differences in power. Ethereal Armor, our next card, is great in white blue, 3.4% improvement. That's basically the third best uncommon for this deck. And Ethereal Armor, you can imagine why. cheap aura that can be like +3, +3, +4, +4 in first strike. Amazing card. I highly recommend putting it on the 1 mana 2/1 Veteran Survivor. That when it connects, it can exile cards from the graveyard, and it exiles 3 cards that get hexproof. Having a hexproof creature with ethereal armor is a very good way of living. Trust me. I've lived that way of living, and it ended well with a happy ending for me. It's also decent in white-green. So I think that there might be this kind of like more enchantment slanted version of white-green that is actually not so bad. It's not going to be as good as white-blue, obviously, but it can be better than the default version of white-green. But the card is not great in either white-red or white-black. So in both of those decks, it decreases in white-black by 2 percentage points, and white-red by 1.5 roughly. So in white-black, probably I wouldn't play it. In white-red, I would really think hard if I have the deck that can support it. Then we have Surgical Suite Hospital Room. That's the room, uncommon one. That's the one that first part reanimates a creature with mana value 3 or less. Second part is sort of like enchantment version of Luminarch Aspirant. And this card is great in white-blue. 3 percentage point improvement, 4th best uncommon for that particular deck. But it's bad in white-black. Again, doesn't weirdly, even though it reanimates, it doesn't do exactly what white-black wants to be doing. So it reanimates small things, while white-black wants to spend effort and energy putting big things in the graveyard artificially rather than losing small things in combat naturally that this card is more destined to. And it also is not particularly attacking in the early turns. And when it starts attacking, it's attacking with big things. So the +1/+1 counter really doesn't matter that much. That thing is already like a premium target for removal anyway. So making it bigger doesn't change that situation that much. So yeah, -3% for that. And card is like good to okay in white-red and white-green with a 0 change, basically. Then we have Veteran Survivor. That card is modestly bad in blue-white and white-black. There are just better things to do in those decks. Like you got a better 1-drop in white-blue and Optimistic Scavenger. So 1.6, -1.6 for that Veteran Survivor in there. That's the 2/1 that I was talking about that exiles cards from the graveyard. -2.4 in white-black, just not on plan. But it has 1.9 plus in white-red and 1.4 plus in white-green. So in those decks, the card is actively good. Like what, 4th best uncommon in white-red and maybe like top 8 in white-green. But in white-green, lots of those uncommons are improving it. Just showing to you that white-green as an archetype is more about putting good cards in there than about the survival kind of synergies. Patched Plaything, the 4/3 double striker, it does enter with 2 -1/-1 counters when you cast it. So normally a 2/1 double striker. That's good in white-black, where it does has 0. It's okay in white-red and white-green, where it's -1. Not as good as you might think. So this is not a priority card by any stretch of imagination, and actively bad in white-blue, -2.9. Lionheart Glimmer, that's the 2/5 with Ward 2 that whenever you attack, your creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Decent in blue-white and white-green, -0.4, -0.8, and pretty bad in white-black, white-red, -2.8, -2.0. So yeah, again, more like a blue-white card really than anything else. Orphans of the Wheat. This card may seem like it's good in white-green, but it's actually not amazing in there at all. -1.8. It's bad in white-blue and white-black, -3.8, -5.4. And it's actually looking acceptable in white-red at -0.7. So that's something to consider, that maybe that card is not terrible in those decks, because maybe sometimes in the white-red you have a problem pushing damage because you have lots of small things, and Orphans of the Wheat can change the equation there. So maybe moderately playable. And then we have two cards that probably you should never put in any of those decks. Savior of the Small, the 3/4 with survival that can return small creature from the graveyard. That's bad in everywhere. At best, it's -3 in white-green, but -3 is not great. And Unwanted Remake, -6, -8, -7. It's just like, no, that's not a playable card. All right. That's where we finished with white. Let's move to blue. And blue commons, we have, well, similar situation. We have 3 universally good blue commons. Glimmer Burst, that's the draw 2, good in every blue deck. Unable to Scream, 1 mana, 0.2, literally blue Swords to Plowshares. Turns out it's true. I'm so happy because in the Magic Data Science game where you have to guess which cards are going to be good in the format, and you have to pick 1 common from each color, 2 wildcard commons, and the signpost. I picked both Glimmer Burst and Unable to Scream. So I picked Unable to Scream as my top blue common and Glimmer Burst as my wild card. Turns out those cards are the 2 best blue commons, and that was a very good selection from me. So I'm happy that it worked. They are all universally good. They are having pluses in every color combination with blue. So play those cards. Vanish from Sight, also a very good blue card, should be played in every deck. That's like the go-to common. But I would like to notice that it's particularly good in blue-green. Blue-green decks, this is an uncommon level power common. It has like +3, not uncommon level power. It's a very good uncommon power level card. Plus 3.2 percentage points on the win rate in blue-green decks. Vanish from Sight, of course, the 4 mana. Put controller of a target permanent, puts it on top or bottom of their library, and you surveil 1. Which is funny because then you can actually, if you target your own thing, you can have 3 choices. You can put it on top, put it on the bottom, or put it on top and surveil it into the graveyard. So I wonder if that interaction will ever come handy. Michael, the Gathering, Aussie Spider Wrangler, says in the chat that the big card draw common with the 1/1 is awesome. Has boosted my win rate by like 10%. Or learning that the big card draw common with a 1/1 is awesome has boosted my win rate by like 10%. Yeah, the card is so good. The card is definitely helping you to transition from mid game to late game in a very, very good shape. I was playing some blue-white deck and splashing the roller coaster. Not the roller coaster ride, or terror coaster ride, whatever it's called, as a splash, and basically Glimmer Burst was almost deterministically allowing me to draw it every game and basically take over the game through that. Then we have Meat Locker / Drowned Diner. That's the room. First chapter is 3 mana, tap something, put 2 stun counters on it. Second one is the draw 3, discard 1 for 5 mana. And that card is good in white-blue and blue-black, sort of at the 0 level, 0.5 maybe. And acceptable in blue-red, which is not a great color combination. Let's start with that. So keep that in mind. But it has pretty bad numbers in blue-green. And that's, I think, the problem is it doesn't help blue-green do what it wants to be doing. Blue-white is a more tempo deck, and tapping something for 2 turns can be enough for you to win the game. Blue-green is a longer game deck, and tapping for 2 turns is just like avoiding inevitable. And sometimes drawing 3 and discarding 1 is a problem for that deck because it manifests dread so much that you can actively risk milling yourself by drawing that 1 extra card without having extra card advantage. Okay. Then the 5th maybe will surprise some of you. It's Don't Make a Sound. But keep in mind that card is not great in blue-white, not great in blue-red, not great in blue-green. That's at around -1.5. But it's really good in blue-black. So 1.5 percentage point increase on the win rate in that. Again, keeping in mind that Dimir is one of the weakest archetypes, if not the weakest. So take it with a grain of salt. So maybe you can squeeze one copy in your blue decks, and probably you should play it in your blue-black decks, and maybe that will make them tick. Next, we have Tunnel Surveyor. It's not good in blue-green. It's acceptable in all other combinations. And it's the same with Underwater Tunnel and Slimy Aquarium. Not amazing, but playable in all color combinations except for blue-green when it looks like it's pretty weaker. Okay, then we go to the second half of the commons, the weaker ones. And here I will focus on the archetypes where it should be played. Twist Reality, the 3-mana counterspell / 3-mana instant speed 2/2 Manifest Dread, basically. It's fine to play that in blue-green and in blue-black. They are about 0. So maybe in blue-black, because blue-black is a high win rate archetype, that's probably a card that you should be playing in all your blue-black decks if you draft one. It's like better than all but 3 blue commons, the top 3, the Vanish, Unable to Scream, and Glimmer Burst. Then we have Stalked Researcher, the 2-mana 3/3 that cannot attack ever. It can attack when you play an enchantment. The classic defender creature that loses a defender sometimes that they started printing in blue. Stalked Researcher, probably only playable / decent in blue-red deck when I assume unlocking rooms is something you do quite a lot, and therefore it will attack more frequently than in other decks. Piranha Fly, borderline playable, like 24th playable maybe in all of the decks. It's just like around -2 to -3.5 percentage points. You probably should avoid it. That's the 2-1 flyer. The Land Cycler, Daggermaw Megalodon, -5 in blue-white, so probably never even consider playing it there, and -2.53 in all others. Again, fringe playable. Then we have Enter the Enigma. That's the 1-mana cantrip that gives something unblockability. That's bad everywhere except for blue-red when it's only -0.9. So within the range of okay cards. And I don't know why. Maybe, getting unblockability to the thing that unlocks rooms when it connects is good. Maybe there are some other synergies with it, or maybe just having a cantrip is good because you want to go through your deck and find the rooms. So I don't know. I would have to test it, but at least I know from this data that data suggests it might be not terrible. There may be some very specific build of those decks as well. Then we have Creeping Peeper, Clammy Prowler, and Erratic Apparition. Those 3 have bad numbers in every kind of blue deck, so yeah, avoid those. Uncommons. First of all, Unnerving Grasp. I know that you know that Unnerving Grasp is good. But spoilers to the top versus bottom player data, it's better. The higher the win rate of the player, the more they prioritize picking that card. The card is excellent. It's a better mana war. It works in every shell and increases the win rate between 4 percentage points and 5.8 percentage points, depending on the archetype. Just pick it very highly, play it very frequently, splash it, make it a reason to draft blue. This is a very good card. Yeah, just elevate it in your pick orders, no matter how high you're evaluating it. Then we have the second best blue uncommon in Fear of Isolation. That's the same story as Unnerving Grasp for 3 of the archetypes: white, blue, blue-black, and blue-red. A bit less so for blue-green, where it only improves the win rate by 0.6%, but it still improves. It's still a great card. Still pick it. You will still find solutions to that. The bouncing something to your hand is such a powerful ability. Then we have Stay Hidden, Stay Silent. Here, same story. Great in every deck. Doesn't have a weaker archetype. It's pretty solid in all of them. Between 2.4 and 4.1 percentage increase in the win rate. Flood Pit's Drowner. Again, same story, between 1.3 and 4.4 percentage win rate increase. So yeah, all 4 of those are premium. I spelled it with syllables, mixtures, and letters. Why wouldn't I? Then we have bottomless pool, locker room. That's the room that bounces things and then turns into a sort of curiosity-ish kind of enchantment. Coastal piracy, maybe? I don't know. That one is good. It's much better in white blue, and especially since white blue is a high win rate archetype, keep in mind that 1.8 percentage point increase is significant. Slightly weaker in blue black, blue red, and blue green, but still 0.2 to 0.8 percentage points increase. Great card. Pick it highly. Play it. Then we have Fear of Falling. That's the 4/4 flyer for 5. So we have our air elemental, and it's a good air elemental. It's good in white, blue, in blue, black. It's good in blue, red. 1.2, 2.1 percentage point increase in the win rate. It's slightly worse in blue, white, and blue, green, where it's -1. But -1, as I said, that's the percentage point. Yeah. But yeah, -1 is still good. It's still like on the edge of being decent. So this is the card that you should be putting in your deck probably most of the time when you're playing those color combinations. Then we have Cursed Windbreaker. That's the 3-mana equipment. It makes a 2/2 by manifesting Dread, and it gives flying. You can re-equip it if the things that you equip with it dies. Actively good in blue-green, 1.7 percentage points increase, so play it there. Actively good in blue-black, 0.9% increase. Decent in blue-white, 0.4, -0.4. And not so great in blue-red, -3. So you should probably not play it in blue-red, but it's good in all the other archetypes. Then we have Duskmourn Domination. Not great in blue-white. That's a 6-mana control magic that turns a creature into vanilla -3, -0. Not so good in blue-white, so -2.3. Good in blue-black, +2.7. So it's one of the better blue-black cards in terms of the win rate. Better than the Fear of Falling, better than the bottomless pool, better than the Cursed Windbreaker. So fine. And then, again, borderline playable in blue, red, and blue, green. And that's way better than I thought about that card. I thought that this card is going to be absolutely unplayable. But it seems like it has homes, and it's fine to be played in some of the decks at least. Just removing an attacker and having a blocker in those slower decks can be a big turnaround. It's when you think about it, it's like Unable to Scream costs 1 mana. Duskmourn Domination costs 5 mana more, so that you gain the life and not the opponent. That's the difference I see between those cards. It's a lot, but that's why it's a worse card than Unable to Scream in most of the decks. If it was maybe 3 mana extra, that card would have been very good. I then we have Paranormal Analyst, actively good in blue-green. That's the 1/3 that whenever you manifest Dread, and that gives you a hint why it's good in blue-green. That's why it is higher in that deck. But it also has decent numbers in blue-white and blue-red, -0.1, -0.6. A caveat there that you probably need specific builds of blue-white and specific builds of blue-red where you have more manifesting Dread. Like if you have your Cursed Windbreaker in your blue-white deck, fine, you can put the Paranormal Analyst. But part of this card being good in white-blue is probably knowing when not to put it in those decks. And that will be quite frequently also, because white doesn't have much manifesting Dread. So you rely on the blue to do that. Maybe you splash something, I don't know. Yeah, once you have it, it's fine. And it's perfect, like when you have Stay Hidden, Stay Silent, and you will activate it several times and manifest Dread by removing a creature from the board. So keep in mind, know when to put that card in your deck. And it's actively bad in blue-black. Just don't put it there. Um, Get Out, that's the blue counter target creature spell, or return 2 permanents you control to your hand. That card is bad in blue white, -2. And okay in blue black and blue red at a 0 roughly, and fine in blue green at -0.8. Again, you need to know which deck should play. It has to be heavier on the blue because you need to pay the blue mana cost, and you'd rather have a lot of things that you want to be bouncing in your hand. Blue red does have the rooms. Perfect. If you use the room twice or a good room only once, you can bounce it back to your hand, replay it. So probably perfect with like Glassworks or I don't know, the Meat Locker slash draw free, discard a card in the blue red deck when you're digging for more value, but not so great in blue white. Okay, then we have cards that probably should not be played that often. Ghostly Keybearer at a stretch can be played in Is It? It's -1.4, and it's much worse than everywhere else. Unwilling Vessel, the 3/2 vigilant creature that whenever you trigger Eerie gets a counter, and then when it dies, you make a flyer with the X +1/+1 counters, where X is number of counters in the Unwilling Vessel. I thought that this card is going to be good. It has bad numbers everywhere. Best is -1.8 in white blue, so maybe at the stretch you can play it, but you definitely should not prioritize this card in white blue. It just doesn't look strong enough. Fear of Imposters, that's the 3 mana 3/2 that can counter, but then the opponent gets to manifest dread. That card, -2 at best in blue green, and generally -3, -4 in the other ones. Don't play it. Scrabbling Skullcrab, don't play it. -2, -4, -5, -6.7. Ugh. And Fear of Failed Tests, the 2/7, bad everywhere. -10 in blue green. That's how bad it is. And I'm sure you're gonna send me a screenshot when it was great because you had a combo deck based on drawing it and putting unblockability on it and drawing a bunch of cards. But no, much better to play a 4 mana, draw 2, make a 1/1. You don't have to connect with anything. Let's move to the black cards. And top common in black does not have impressive numbers. It is good in black red, 3.2 percentage points increase of the win rate, but elsewhere it's 0.1, 0.4, -0.7. So just okay. You should always probably play it in every black deck. It's Final Vengeance, 1 mana as an additional cost to sacrifice a creature and enchantment, and then you exile target creature. 3.2 percentage point improvement in black red. This card is pivotal for that deck. Unfortunately, it's good elsewhere, which means that probably black red won't get as many copies as it would have wanted to. So there you go. Second place is Murder, just solid everywhere, 0.6, 0.3, 0.4, just like around 0, -0.5 in black red, where you probably want to have Final Vengeance instead. So fine card to play. Third place, Winter's Intervention, same situation, just around 0, 0, -0.2, -0.3, -0.5 plus. So fine in every black archetype. Those 3 cards probably should be played in every single archetype. Black is the weakest color in terms of win rate, so you will see that those numbers are not so impressive in here. Then we have the first creature, first non-removal spell, Innocuous Red. It's good in black, red, and white, black. Again, as I mentioned before, anything that that manifests dread is good in white, black. 0.8, 0.7 there. Significantly weaker in black, green at -1.4, and much weaker in blue, black at -2.6. I don't know exactly why is that weakness of blue, black. Blue, black is already having a low win rate, so this being below the win rate of blue black is particularly alarming. I would avoid playing rat in those decks. Then we have Fanatic of Harrowing, a card that is not great anywhere, but it's great in white black. Again, 4 mana 2/2, both players discard a card, but you also draw a card. And in white black, discarding a card can be an actively beneficial, especially on turn 4 when you discard a big creature. Turn 5 you cast reanimation spell and happy times. 1.8 in white black, minus 1.2 in blue black, minus 1.5 in black green. So maybe you can squeeze it in to the push comes to shove. Black red, it's minus 2.5. Probably you have better cards to put in your decks there. Fear of Lost Teeth. That's the next one. Not really something you want to have in white black. Minus 2.6. Really, at a push, it can go into a blue black or black green deck. It's minus 2, minus 1.6 in there, and it's fine in black red at minus 0.5. A good sacrifice fodder, where sacrificing it at will might be actually something that can kill, I don't know, a 3/1 dog or something like that. Or finish a combat, or because you played like an enchantment that makes creature killable by any ping, it can kill that thing. So yeah, pretty decent in black red, but outside of black red, I would be careful of playing that card. Spectral Snatcher, the land cycler, bad in every combination except for white black when it's minus 0.2, which is solid. So just the removal part works for that. And we have the same situation for the Derelict Attic / Widow's Walk. That's the room. The first part draws 2 cards and you lose 2 life. It's fine in white black, but minus 0.4. It's not so great in other color combinations at minus 2.5 to minus 4.3. So just don't play it there. And then we just have a bunch of commons that I would probably just advise you not to play in any black archetypes. Appendage Amalgam, the 3/2 flash, minus 2.1 is the best it can do in black green, probably because it's an enchantment creature, so allows you to delirium a bit faster or something. Cracked Skull, just minus 2.4 best in white black. White black is not so good, so decreasing the win rate of that deck is not what you'd be looking for. Resurrected Cultist, the 4/1 that has delirium, again minus 2.2 in black green, but apart from that, not great. Fear of the Dark, just minus 3 at best. Given to Violence, the combat trick, I guess, minus 2.6 in white black, but that's about it. Gives you maybe a turn of extra life sometimes through lifelink. Balemark Leech, between minus 3 and minus 8, depending on the deck. Like, it's really, really bad numbers in black green. Just avoid playing it in black green altogether. And Cackling Slasher not even has enough data to be counted in blue black, at least not when I was checking the data for that. At minus 7 to minus 10 percentage points, just don't play those cards. This means that the bench of black commons is pretty short. And apart from the Spectral Snatcher and Derelict Attic / Widow's Walk, which are okay in white black and bad everywhere else, there is only maybe like 4 or 5 black commons that I would advise you to be playing in those archetypes. So yeah. And I think that this was a big miss from the design team of this set in general. I already told you that commons are not as impactful as normally. In black, this is exacerbated by how bad they are in general. Uncommons, and it's not that much better, honestly. Nowhere to Run is good everywhere. 3 percentage points increase. That's the 2-mana enchantment that gives -3/-3, and things look hexproof and ward. Might be good way of dealing with the Valgavoth, if opponent reanimates it against you. But it's great in white, black, blue, black, and black, red, about 3% roughly, and it's fine in black, green at 0.7. So not as good there as it is in the other ones, but still positive numbers, which is good. Then we have Osseous Stick Twister, the 2-mana 2/2 life linker, which is already a good rate. That has some abilities once you get Delirium. So solid everywhere, like 1% increase in white, black, blue, black, and black, red, and 2.2 in black, green. So it's actively better there because you're working on having Delirium in those decks. So it will get the additional ability of potentially pinging your opponent for 2 while gaining some life. Then we have Commune with Evil, third best uncommon, but it's very lopsided. It's phenomenal in white-black, 3.6% percentage point increase, just what you want to be doing in that deck. It's really good in black-green, 2 percentage point increase, and pretty bad in blue-black and black-red at minus 1.3 and minus 2.5. So play it in your white-black and your black-green decks. It's great in there. Try to avoid it elsewhere. Then we have a Cynical Loner. It's fine. 0.3, 1 percentage point, minus 0.4 in white, black, blue, black, and black, green, respectively, and slightly off plan for black, red at minus 1.3, but probably still like playable if you can get it like late, because you probably don't want to prioritize picking it. Whew. Okay. Sporogenic Infection. That's the 2 mana aura that play on a creature, and then you choose a player, and they have to sacrifice a non-token creature, and the creature that is enchanting will die from any damage. Fine. Again, maybe less fine in white-black, minus 1.3, but it's fine in the other ones, minus 0.7, minus 0.2, 0.9, that kind of range. It's very close to each other, so playable on all black decks, really. Live or Die. The kill a creature or reanimate a creature at instant speed. As you can imagine, good in Reanimator, 1.2% increase. So third best uncommon in that color combination. But also solid 0.7 in black-green. Acceptable minus 0.6 in blue-black. And pretty not acceptable minus 2.7 in black-red. So probably black-red is the one that you don't want to sacrifice high picks to pick this uncommon and play it while it's not promoting your game plan. Wow, that's amazing, Isaiah. I never fall asleep to Rosemary. I always fall asleep while I'm streaming, so I can't imagine someone staying awake while I'm doing that. But okay, I'm excused. It's midnight here, so that's why I'm falling asleep, not because it's boring. Withering Torment is the next uncommon. It's, again, okay. It's not as good as I thought it would be. That's the 3 mana instant speed thing that kills a creature and enchantment and deals damage to you. It's 0.6 plus in black green, and I think that big part of that is that it's an instant speed spell, and instant speed is something very desirable for the tournament. But if we compare it, Murder does better basically everywhere, even though it costs 1 black mana more. So we have an uncommon with some extra abilities, but the 2 life loss is big enough drawback, and having to sacrifice a much higher pick to pick the card, because it's an uncommon, so most of the time people just pick it based on rarity a bit higher, means that it just doesn't work as well. In blue-black, it's like minus 1.6, where blue-black is playing defense early, and losing this extra 2 life is an actually important cost. And in other decks, it's like minus 0.4, minus 0.7, plus 0.6, so just around 0. But card that you will play, but don't think that this is going to be amazing, as you might have thought early in the format. Then we have Vile Mutilator. That's the 7 mana 6/5 Trampler. ETBs, you sacrifice a creature, they sacrifice an enchantment and a creature. Obviously, the sacrificing a creature on your side is a casting cost. So if you reanimate it, you don't get that. They just lose 2 permanents while you gain a 6/5 Trampler with flying. Unsurprisingly good in the reanimator strategy, plus 0.9. Yeah, the Withering Torment does have a plus of being able to hit enchantments. I didn't mention it. I thought I mentioned it, but that's the upside that it has. Yeah, but yeah, again, worse numbers than Murder has, just to make you understand. Vile Mutilator, good in Reanimator, plus 1 percentage point roughly, but also decent in Black Green, where it's 0.2, so fine. Acceptable-ish in Blue Black at minus 1.1, but Blue Black is weak anyway, so we'll probably want to only play Blue Black when all the cards are improving your win rate. So you might want to increase your threshold of what you're accepting for Blue Black. And minus 3.2 in Black Red, so just don't play it there. Then we have Defiled Crypt Cadaver Lab. That's the room where one part is the raise dead and the other part is sort of whenever whenever a card leaves your graveyard, you get a 2/2. Bad in white black. Turns out that's not what you want to be doing there. You don't want to be returning your massive 7 mana things back to your hand. You want to return them directly to the battlefield. And the 2/2 that you get for reanimating something or moving something from the graveyard is just not on the plan for what you're really doing. So -1.8 there. But it's fine in all the other combinations. Blue-black, it has -0.6. Black-red, it has -0.1. Black-green, it has -0.7. So you can return something, you get a 2/2. There's plenty of grindy things that you are doing in those decks. Black-red might have a synergy with the rare, the 2/2 haste trample zombie that will leave the graveyard quite a lot if you have it in your deck. So maybe that's when people put it in the deck. That's why it's doing particularly well in black-red at -0.1. So yeah, fine card to play, not amazing card to play. Popular Egotist is basically similar numbers as the Defiled Crypt, but slightly worse. -1.7 in white-black. And then -0.8, -0.7, -1 in the other archetypes. So playable in there, but not particularly good. Valgavoth's Faithful. That's the 1 mana guy that can sacrifice for 4 mana and reanimate something. That card is, again, lopsided. It's okay in white-black and black-green, where you should be probably playing it in white-black, probably always, in black-green, probably in the builds that are particularly good for reanimation strategy. But again, looking at this data, you see the Vile Mutilator and also being good in white-black and black-green. You see Live or Die also being good in white-black and black-green, which points me to the fact that black-green can have this reanimation package and be pretty decent. Then we have Miasma Demon. That's the 6 mana 5/4 flyer that when it ETBs, you can discard cards from your hand and give a bunch of things -2/-2. Pretty bad in every deck except for black-green, where it's actually fine. 0.2 improvement of the win rate. So more than fine. Good, even. Then we have Let's Play the Game. That's the 4 mana sorcery. When you have Delirium, you pick 3 options. If you don't have Delirium, you pick one of the options. Either creature opponents control get -1/-1, or opponent discards 2 cards, or drain 3. And this is bad in white-black and blue-black. These are the decks that don't want to be building towards Delirium. And also don't have the tools to be building toward Delirium, and that's why probably it's doing badly, -4 percentage points. And then there is black-red and black-green, where the card is fine to good. In black-red, it's -0.6. In black-green, it's 1.4 plus. So actively good, one of the better uncommons, actually third best uncommon in black-green decks. That's something I also didn't expect when I was starting to analyze this data. I will be looking more at that card, especially when I'm trying to be black-green. Black-red maybe doesn't try to build Delirium, but it has tools to have Delirium because it has instant speed spells that you want to be playing in red. It has enough sorceries, and red will naturally be trying to be building towards Delirium, and black-red will just, as a, again, side effect of being red, will have naturally build something that can build Delirium. So probably that's the reason. Okay. And then, so you see, the weird part of the black uncommons is that there's no universally bad black uncommon, but there are also very few universally good black uncommons. They are all very specific, and I think that this is the moment where we can get like some edge by knowing those good homes. Let's Play the Game, a card I didn't expect to be good. Miasma Demon, I also didn't think it was good in anything. I might have been higher on it before the format was released, but as soon as it hit the board, I realized the card was not good. But I didn't test it in like green shell. And then we have Killer's Mask, another card that I rarely played, but it's actually good in white-black. And again, I like to repeat myself, anything that manifests dread is just good in white-black, which means that I probably should be packing my white-black decks full of Manifest Dread. Whatever I can get that Manifest Dread is good in those decks. So yeah, interesting. Killer's Mask has a 0 roughly for white-black decks, so doesn't change the win rate, which is good. And then doesn't have enough data in blue-black, and it has minus 3.6, minus 2.4 in the other two. So you don't want to be playing it there. And last we have Dashing Bloodsucker as the last black uncommon, but it has such a range that it's just insane. It's absolutely stone cold and unplayable in black green with a minus 5.6 improvement in that deck. That's really bad. But in white black, it's plus 0.4, actively good. And then blue black minus 1, which is acceptable, and black red minus 3. So it goes from 0.4, minus 1, minus 3, minus 5.6. Very different performances for that card in very different decks. So, and again, white black, it seems to be doing the best because probably even Suicide Attack with the Dashing Bloodsucker when you can gain 4 life is something that you actively want to be trying. And maybe there are those people who try to build less Reanimator, but more Eerie-based white-black decks, and that's where the Dashing Bloodsucker finds its home and it gets played. So yeah. Okay, let's move to red. And red is a good color in this set, but not so many universally good red commons. We have Glassworks and Clockwork Percussionist, 2 best commons in red. They are particularly good in blue-red and blue and black-red. With 3 percentage point increase in those decks, like really strong. And I'm surprised about the Clockwork Percussionist in blue-red. So I don't know what's going on in there. Maybe it's played rarely in a very specific aggressive build of blue-red, but because it has an improvement, I mean, I would at least draw some attention to that result. So I don't know where does it come from, but yeah, numbers there. And those cards are still decent in white, red, and red, green. The problem with white, red, and green is that those decks are quite full of medium quality creature and removal, so nothing will improve too much. But our third best red common in terms of how it improves the decks, Scorching Dragonfire, is really good in both white, red, and red, green, like 1.4 and 2.6 improvement. Still pretty decent in blue, red, 2.2 percentage point improvement, and minus 0.3 in black, red, where it's like the weakest. Still good enough to be played in every single of the red decks, but it really is good in red, green. Like 2.6 is an amazing number there. Especially in an archetype that is one of the highest win rate. Then we have Turn Inside Out, solid in every archetype, 0.7, 0.9, 0.0, 1.0. That's the kind of range we get from that card. So just play it in any red deck, it will be fine. Fifth best red common, and this is something that maybe is slightly underplayed, at least I think, is Ticket Booth / Tunnel of Hate, 3 mana Manifest Dread or 6 mana enchantment that gives your creatures double strike. One of your creatures double strike every combat. So that's solid and should be played. Then chat hates the numbers. They disagree with the number. They want a recount. They were storming the capital. They don't want to hear what I'm going to say. But Most Valuable Slayer is just being very mid in all the decks. Minus 1.5, minus 2.7, minus 1.6, minus 1.5. Not a great card. And chat, I put it on my list of as the top red common before the set was released. So I mean, I'm suffering more than you. I put this card on the line as my reputation saver. Just didn't deliver. I think it often is very good, but also often is just like absolutely doing nothing, and that's the problem with that card. I think the upside covers for the moments where it's just not doing enough. So yeah, probably you can still put it in most decks, maybe not in the blue-red. You can put it, but it's treated as a filler card rather than a premium common. Okay, Hand That Feeds. That's another card that we had a chat before I started recording, and I mentioned that this card will appear. Hand That Feeds also has the same, even worse numbers than the Most Valuable Slayer, minus 2.5 to minus 1.9, that kind of range. Just absolute filler, not great in any shape or form. There are better things to be doing, and I think I noticed that 2-drops in general, they need to be really premium in the set, and there are so many good premium uncommons that are 2-drops that you don't need to prioritize the common 2-drops. They are just absolutely replaceable, and even replaceable minus. And then we got the same with the Ragged Playmate, slightly better than White Red at minus 1.7, but not by much. And from now on, almost all the red commons are just not that playable. Impossible Inferno is okay in red-green at minus 1. And that's something that you might want to mark. That's the 5 mana instant speed removal spell. When you have Delirium, you exile the top card of your library. You can play it until the next turn. So basically 5 mana, kill something, draw a card. That's basically Annihilate. But not even that great in the format, just like minus 1%. So playable, but not amazing. And much worse results in other color combinations. Grab the Prize, Vicious Clown, those cards all like between -2 and -5/6. So not great. Same with Ripchain, Razorkin, the 5/3 reach, Bedhead Beastie, the Land Cycler, those cards are not really playable. Boiler Bilge's Ripper, the 5 mana 4/4, and when it ETBs, you can sacrifice something to ping any target for 2. That includes players, if I'm not mistaken. That card is okay in black-red at minus 0.8. So as a top end, you can put it in. You would hope that you'll get better top end, but it's playable in there. Minus 0.8 is absolutely fine. And then Rampaging Soul Rager, that's the 1/4 that gets +3/+0 when you have 2 open rooms. Just no. Doesn't even have data in red-green, rightfully so. In white-red, it's minus 10 percentage point card. And even in blue-red, it's minus 4.4. So where it technically should be the best, and probably how it was designed is that, oh, we're going to give the room deck something that only they want. They shouldn't be wanting it. That's the problem that the card has. But generally, the top end of 6 really solid commons with Glassworks, Percussionist, Dragonfire, Turn Inside Out, and Ticket Booth. I said 6, I mentioned 5. But those 5s are good, and the rest is Slayer is on the border, and the rest is sort of mid-minus, with 2 exceptions of Impossible Inferno in red-green and Boiler Bilge's Ripper in black-red. Worth mentioning, like all the stuff that is there is like up to 3 mana, really, with Glasswork being 3 mana and Ticket Booth being 3 mana. Everything over 3 mana becomes instantly much worse in the red decks. Not that uncommon, though, because we have an excellent uncommon in Razorkin Horde Caller. That's the Eomer. Basically, 5 mana, 4/4 haste. Whenever you attack with whatever, you get a 1/1. Fine. It's a great card. It's great in every single color combination. Just play it every single time. Just don't care. Pick it. It's great. And this is like by far the best red uncommon. And there are still some doozies. There are some great ones. I mean, Isaiah, it's best in blue-red, but you have to account for the fact that blue-red sucks. So it's still probably the best in white-red, because white-red is great. So improving on a great win rate of white-red by 2.7 is more significant than improving over the very, very bad win rate of blue-red. Yeah. So this is, all those numbers are relative to the archetype power. If I'm saying that something is really good in white-black, I mean, it's really good in white-black. It's just white-black. It's not really good. That's the problem. Okay. Betrayer's Bargain is great in anything. It's not as great as Razor King Hordecaller, but that's, the 2 mana removal spell. You either sacrifice a creature enchantment or pay 2 extra mana to cast it, and it's deal 5, exile the target, kind of like Scorching Dragonfire plus kind of spell. Increasing the win rate between 1 percentage points in white red and 2.8 in black red, where on top of being a good spell, it also adds this additional sacrifice outlet for you. One shot, but still a sacrifice outlet. Irreverent Gremlin is also there, between 1 percentage point increase and 2.4, 1 percentage point increase in red green, and notably 2.4 percentage point increase in white red, which is already the highest win rate archetype. So that means the card is just great in that archetype. You should be actively looking for the Irreverent Gremlins when you're playing white red, because 2 power synergies, getting rid of lands that you don't need because your deck should be and curving out at 4. Just a great card, universally good in every red archetype, so just play it. There we have Fear of Burning Alive, which has a range. In white red, it's minus 0.5, so it's filler-ish basically because of the 6 mana cost and not always having the Delirium active, so you can ping something for 4. Still playable, but not you shouldn't be looking for it when you're white red. In blue red, and it's 1% improvement, which is good. Black red, 2% improvement, which is great, and red green 2.3. Which is also great, given that red green is also a solid deck. So you actively want to be playing Fears of Burning Alive in black red and red green. Piggy Bank is next, and that one is great in white red and in blue red. So 1.7, 1.8 percentage points increase in those, and very good, but not great in black red and red green, where it got like 0.4, 0.3. So there is a sort of shift between those two. Then we have Painter Studio / Defaced Gallery, the room where one is exile 2 cards. You can cast them until the end of your next turn. And the other side is 2 mana enchantment. Whenever you attack, your creatures that are attacking get +1/+0. And this card is great in white red. This is your premium white red uncommon. It's even better than Razor King Hordecaller in white red decks. Plus 3.4 percentage points increase in the win rate. So really important card for the deck. The 2 mana thing that gives +1/+0 to your attacking creatures when most of your creatures are like 2 power, boosting them by 50% is amazing. So that's important. And late in the game, of course, you get like draw 2 basically from that as well. So super good card for that deck. And it's still good in blue red and black red. It's a room, so blue red gets some kind of synergy bonus. And in black red, also, you have a lot of small attackers. So the +1/+0 option for 2 mana is really good. And in red green is actually bad, minus 2.2. This is not what red green wants to be doing. So the card is not performing very well. Knowing that may stop you from sacrificing a high pick to put a card that is not so great into your deck. And the last one from the good half of the red uncommons. All of those are almost like playable in every red deck, maybe except for Painter Studio and the red green. Is Fear of Being Hunted, the 3 mana 4/2 haste enchantment creature. It has to be blocked. It's solid in white red, black red, and red green at 0.7, 0.8, and 1.2. And it's weaker in blue red because it's slightly off plan with the hasty aggressive creature, and there it's minus 1.1, which is still acceptable there. So really, from those first 7 red uncommons, only Painter Studio, Defaced Gallery, and red green is slightly lower. Then we have Vengeful Possession. That's the threaten for the set, and you can rummage while you've set her. Card is actively good in black red. Sacrifice deck likes stealing creatures. First time I heard it. But it's plus 2 percentage points in black red. It's okay to okay minus for the white red and red green at minus 0.9, minus 1.5. and there's not enough data in blue-red, which probably means you should be playing it there. Yeah, it is really good. And sacrifice decks always like to steal things because you can steal it, and guess what? Then you can sacrifice. So yeah, and Vengeful Possession is a really strong version of that effect. I mean, if you're drafting in paper, I would suggest you to, if you have a bulk for the sort of like commons and the commons that you want to be keeping, keep copies of the Vengeful Possession, because if there is going to be a market for a threatened effect in constructed, like in Standard or Pioneer, Vengeful Possession is one of the stronger versions of the card right now in those formats, I think. Advice and constructed. That's why you come here, aren't you? Then we have Untimely Malfunction. That's the I mean, Thunderfunk, depending on what deck you're playing, but sometimes it's stronger than Making a Treasure. Yeah. Untimely Malfunction is the 2-mana instant, and you either redirect a single target spell, or you destroy an artifact, or what was the third option? Two creatures can't block, sort of like a charm. That can be useful in the aggressive decks, but it's not great anywhere of those. Minus 1.7 in white-red, minus 2.7 in red-green, and doesn't even have data in blue-red and black-red. Maybe in black-red it could be playable. I don't know why there's such a small data sample for that in those decks. It will be interesting to see when we get it. But for now we don't, so I can't say anything. It's just probably like fringe playable sometimes. And this card, keep in mind, this is the best of 1 data, and best of 3, that card can be actively good when you sideboard it against decks that have a lot of artifacts, for example, or a lot of removal spells that you can redirect at some stage. So very different animal in best of 3 this than in best of 1. Then Diversion Specialist, that's the 4/3 with Menace, and you can sacrifice a permanent, and if you do, you exile for 1 mana, and if you do, you exile the top card of your library, and you can cast it until the end of this turn. Pretty bad numbers for both white-red and red-green at -4 and -2.8. Very disappointing minus 2.2 for the black-red, especially given how good Vengeful Possession is, and all the other like classic cards with Steel and Sack, like what was the removal? Final Vengeance, how good it is. It's disappointing that this card is not delivering there. So a bit sad. It is okay numbers for blue-red, but blue-red, as I said, already weak. So minus 1.1 is not great. Norin, unplayable probably in black-red, but minus 5.3, and not really in blue-red at minus 2.6, and filler level card in red-green and white-red. In red-green, it can be cute when you're manifesting a lot, and it can exile your manifested thing that is not a creature, and you can cast it because it flips when you exile it with Norin, and you can get the spell back like that. So interesting application there, and I'm pretty sure that if you have a specific build of red-green with lots of manifesting dread, Norin can be pretty good, actually, because you can treat your 2/2s as sort of 2/2 unblockable, and if they block, I gain a spell, which is great. Trial of Agony, that's the 1 mana removal, where opponent chooses 1 creature to get 5 damage and 1 that will not be able to block. So most likely kill the second biggest creature that they have, and biggest cannot block for a turn. And this card is good in white-red-ish at minus 1.3, playable in white-red at least. Other 2, the numbers are too low. And you should know when this card is going to be slightly better in your deck by analyzing what you're trying to do. Also, probably in best of 3. Against some decks, it's going to be actively very good. Against some, it's going to be much weaker. Violent Urge, the combat trick that gives +1/+0 and first strike or double strike if you have Delirium. Bad in white-red and black-red, not enough data in blue-red, and playable in red-green at minus 1.2, so just like barely filler. Then we have Infernal Phantom. That card is bad in every red deck. That's the 2/3 that has Eerie. And lastly, we have Pyroclasm, which has another huge range, not even played in white-red enough. Surprisingly, white-red mages don't want to kill their own board. But in blue-red, it's actively good at minus 0.5. That's a card you want to be playing in those decks. It plays a role, stops opponent from going too wide early because they can either play into it and then it works fine, or if they don't play into it, it slows down their clock, which gives you more time, which is exactly what you want to be achieving anyway. So it's fine either way. But it's bad in black-red and red-green at -7, -6.5. So it's strictly a blue-red card, basically. And also, like, Pyroclasm is ever so slightly better because you have also the unable to speak in that thing, so you can turn something into an O2 and then kill it with the Pyroclasm as well, while killing other things. So you don't waste a removal on the thing that is unable to scream. You just as a side effect of it being an O2, you can kill it also with a Pyroclasm. Now to the green cards, and we start again with the commons. The best green common is the Spineseeker Centipede. It's good in all the archetypes. Best in red-green when it's 1.4 plus. Worst best in white-green when it's basically 0. It's slightly off-plan there, but it's still a good card, so you still will be playing it. And also enables you maybe some splashes that are interesting. So yeah, very good card. You will play it in every deck that has green, most likely. Then we have Monstrous Emergence, the removal. 2 mana for dealing damage as much as the power of the creature that you control or you have in your hand. Really good in white, green, blue, green, and black, green. Slightly lower numbers in red, green, where it's minus 0.9. And I think that this has something to do with, in red, green, you will have Scorching Dragonfire as a 2 mana removal spell of choice, mainly because you already have big creatures, so you're not afraid of, you don't have to like kill super big things. You'd rather kill smaller things. And this is a sorcery in a deck that has already a lot of sorceries. And I often had those decks where I have like Manifest Dread and Say Its Name and something else that is also a sorcery. And because I have so many, it's harder for me to get Delirium. I would rather have that Monstrous Rage be a Scorching Dragonfire to be an instant and to be the right type. It's still minus 0.9, so it's absolutely playable in red-green decks. It's just maybe slightly weaker than you think it is in those decks. And that was definitely my kind of feeling after I started doing this analysis, that it is looking slightly weaker than I had it in my pick order for the red-green deck. Then we have Manifest Dread, a card that who knows what it does. It does Manifest Dread. And it's great in red-green, 1.4 plus. It's great in white-green, 0.8 plus. And it's fine in blue-green and black-green at minus 0.1. So again, you always almost play it in green decks. And a very similar card in terms of power level, Wary Watchdog. I wouldn't say it before the format hit. I thought that Manifest Dread would be better, but Wary Watchdog is equally good. Again, 1.1 in white-green, 0.5 in red-green, and then around 0 in blue-green and black-green. So good in all of the all 4 of those. And these 4 commons, the Centipede, Emergence, and Manifest Dread and Wary Watchdog, you will play in all the green decks more or less. These are the uncuttable / rarely cuttable commons, and if you cut them, you're good. You shouldn't be worrying about that draft. Say Its Name is number 5, but it's particularly good in black-green with 1.5 percentage point increase, which means that it's the best black-green common in the set, basically. It's still good in red-green at 0.7, but it's significantly weaker in blue-green at minus 2.4. That's something I also did not expect that much, but probably you don't have that much of a delirium motivations to play. And yeah, it's slightly lower. In white-green, it's acceptable at minus 1.1, but again, white-green is already weak. Some card that weakens it even further is not something you'll be interested in. But yeah, maybe either it's a less of a priority in blue-green, or there is another option that people play it too aggressively in blue-green, and because of that, it doesn't play well. Maybe in blue-green, this is a sort of like a late game card. But also because blue-green wants to manifest dread a lot, maybe this card is just too much of mill, and you will be flying close to the sun in terms of your library size. Yeah, instantly the chat writes exactly the same thing. So yeah. And yeah, that's another great comment from Procobrito, that blue-green decks will often have low creature count. Like the top uncommons you will have in blue-green decks are going to be sorcery Mana War that manifests dread, and sorcery Eternal Witness that also manifests dread. And you can't return those, so you're like, your best cards in the deck will be just milled, and you can't get them back with Say Its Name because it's not creature heavy enough. So again, if you build a blue-green deck that is creature heavy, probably Say Its Name goes up in the evaluation instantly. And still, there is the risk of milling yourself, so keep that in mind. Then we have the Bashful Beastie, the 5-mana 5/4 that dies into Manifest Dread. Great in black-green, 0.4 improvement. Slightly weaker in all the other ones at minus 0.9, minus 1.3, minus 1.2, so just around -1 for them. Again, that means it will be playable, but probably not a priority. Then there's the Slavering Branch Snapper. That card is like barely playable in white-green and black-green at minus 1.2, minus 1.3, and filler minus in blue-green and red-green at minus 1.7 or minus 2. So don't prioritize it. I know that in the first episode I was saying that it was a hidden gem in green as a card. No, I was not saying that it was a hidden gem. I was saying about Bashful Beastie that was a hidden gem. I guess it's not a hidden gem anymore. The drop of Bashful Beastie's win rate was quite noticeable after the first week, so card has dropped in evaluation in general. Slavering Brand Snapper was not a hidden gem, is not a hidden gem, and will not be a hidden gem for the rest of the format. It will be a filler minus playable, and maybe, in some versions of black-green that are more heavy on reanimate strategies, it's going to be slightly better, but that's about it. Then we have Flash Burrower, the 2-drop with Death Touch that gives something else Death Touch when it attacks. Acceptable in white-green, blue-green. Acceptable minus in red-green, around -1, -1.5 percentage points. And not so good in black-green at -2.6. Probably you should avoid playing it there. Then we have Moldering Gym / Weight Room. I was way too high on that card in the early format. I was putting it way too many decks. And black-green, because black-green will be probably the most naturally splashing archetype in this format. It seems to be better. It's at 0, which is good. So you should be playing it in your black-green decks, probably when you're splashing something. But also ramping in black-green is fine. Other decks, red-green, it's acceptable at -1.2. White-green, blue-green, -2, -3.4, probably shouldn't be playing it. And then we have the card that is my biggest discovery, I think, from this analysis in general. Frantic Strength. 3-mana aura with flash, gives target creature +2/+2 and trample. And this card is actively good in white-green. And I started putting it in white-green decks, and I had decent results with that. So it was absolutely fine in there. Even if you curve out something dumb like the Acrobat, and on turn 3 attack with it while opponent is tapped, they will usually jump because they don't want your stuff to gain flying. Then you drop Frantic Strength, you end up with a 4/4 flyer. They have to deal with that thing then, which means that you buy yourself time. Maybe they are not able to deal with it because I don't know, they have Scorching Dragonfire and it's a 4/4, and then you can actually take over the game quite easily. So Frantic Strength, actively good in white-green decks, keeping in mind that white-green decks are not great. But if you're drafting white-green, you should be picking those last pick Frantic Strength and probably play 2 of them in your deck, and you'll be happy with it if you have some survival synergies there. It's better than anywhere else. So -3, -2. Just don't put it anywhere else. But the white green, this is a card that you can be playing. Horrid Vigor, similar but worse than Frantic Strength. It's okay in white green decks, -0.6. That's the combat trick that gives something Death Touch and Indestructible. Again, not playable in any other of the color combinations. -3, -4, -2, that kind of range. And then we end with four green commons that you should be actively avoiding playing. Grasping Longneck, the 4/2 reach that dies into 2 life. Cautious Survivor, the 4 mana 4/4 that has 2 life survivor ability. Cryptid Inspector, the 2/3 vigilant that grows when you manifest dread or flip creatures. And Anthropede, human legs. It has human legs, or it has legs made of humans. That's the question. That one is definitely pretty bad. -6, -7, -5, -4. It's just not playable probably in most decks. Now, sometimes, of course, those cards will be good or will be acceptable in some of the builds, but general big data shows that those cards are generically not good. And yeah, I can imagine some blue-green homes when Cryptid Inspector is going to be fine, but in generic blue-green deck, it's still -3 percentage points. So it's going to be weak more frequently than good. I mean, all of us will have our butt kicked by many cards. I've beaten my opponents with the Grasping Longneck as well, but that doesn't mean that the card is good. It just will happen sometimes. And, it's memorable when it happens to you, but it's not that memorable when it just like vanilla 2/3 or vanilla 4/2 or something like that. Okay. Uncommons. And there's one uncommon that's just so much better. And it's the same story as with the Mana War. Under the Skin is the Eternal Witness, Manifest Dread sorcery creature. 3 mana, Manifest Dread, return a permanent from your graveyard to your hand. Excellent in every single green deck. Just treat it as a reason to draft. I've been recently watching LSV posted 4 trophy lists from last week that he reached the trophies. All of them had Under the Skin. Most of them had threats around every corner. Just a cornerstone of those grindy green decks. Under the Skin between +3 and +5.6. Great. I mean, just like every deck wants it. Threats around every corner, maybe a bit less known as a good card. The fake Sullen Simulacrum at Uncommon. It's a 4 mana for Manifest Dread and search for a basic land from your library, put it into play tapped, which is like the first part of the Solemn Simulacrum. It doesn't get you to draw a card when it dies, but any other time that you Manifest Dread, you're also going to ramp. And those decks can be sometimes very mana hungry. So great thing for that. Threats around corner between +1.3 and red-green. That maybe is too aggressively slanted to use the full potential of the card. 1.7 in white-green, 2.1 in blue-green, and 2.3 percentage points in black-green. So good in all of those. I mean, better than any green common, really. And yeah, you should be playing it. Then we have Patchwork Beastie, which is okay in every green archetype, but it's just phenomenal in red-green. 4.4 percentage points there. On par with Under the Skin, and Under the Skin is already excellent there. So definitely worth it. It's also very good in black-green at 2.4, and it's still good but not great in blue-green and white-green at -0.3, -0.2, +0.2. So about 0 in those things. So not improving the win rate, but not decreasing the win rate. You should be fine playing it every single time. Just probably, you if you open a pack and you're playing blue-green and there's a Patchwork Beastie and Under the Skin or threats around every corner, you just jam slam Under the Skin or threats around every corner, and rather than the Patchwork Beastie. Then we have the Insidious Fungus, solid card everywhere, not a stellar card anywhere. Between 0.5 and 1.2 in all the archetypes, you just will always play it. You will always be happy to play it. It won't be like, you know, a card that carries the draft, but it will carry games, and that's the important part of that card. It sometimes will be sort of like meh, cycling, but in some games it's going to be excellent, and that excellence will give you those small boosts, small edges in the games. Then we have two cards that are doing very well in white-green, and they all are having Survivor in their name, which is a hint. Rootwise Survivor, that's the 5 mana 3/4 with haste, and when it survives combat, you get to turn one of your lands into a 3/3. Surprisingly good, that card. I was not betting on it being decent at all when I saw it, and it exceeded my expectations. It sort of reminds me of the olden times of Crimson Vow, when there was the werewolf that flipped and made insects, and it was much better than I thought about it being, the 5 mana 3/4. This card is sort of similar. It's just like the haste allows the first activation to be much more feasible for you. It's still solid anywhere else, actually. So 1.4 in white-green, but plus 0.3 in red-green, minus 0.2 in black-green, minus 0.8 in blue-green. Fine to be playing it everywhere. It's just, you know, it's a 5-drop, so you don't have to prioritize it at all. You should be getting it slightly later because people are still a bit low on it, I think. So yeah, fine card, but no need for prioritizing it. And Defiant Survivor has exactly the same numbers almost. So much better in white-green, fine in black-green and red-green, slightly lagging in blue-green, but still playable in all of those decks. That's the 3/2 that manifests dread when it survives combat. It might tempt you slightly to the blue-green, but actually blue-green is where it's at weakest. So the fact that it manifests dread should not obscure the fact that it has to also survive combat. And again, this is like a great card to put this to put the Frantic Strength on when you attack with it. You attack with the 3/2, it will almost automatically be blocked, and probably it's going to be blocked by a 2/2. And then you make it into a 5/4 manifest dread, and they still need to deal with the 5/4 trampler. Not to mention that, you know, you will trample some damage through, so that's a great bonus of the Frantic Strength. And last from the first half of the green uncommons. Last from the first half, not even half. We're like 7/15. We have Break Down the Door. That's the 3 mana instant. You either manifest dread, or you exile target artifact, or you exile target enchantment. And again, solid card. Much better in black green and red green and blue green than in white green, where it's slightly lagging, but still playable, I think, in all of those. Although in white green, minus 1.4 is nothing to write home about because it's already got a win rate, as I mentioned a million times here. But really solid in blue green, black green, and red green. So you should be playing this card and be happy with it. Between minus 0.3 and 0.6 is fine. Then we have the Wickerfolk Thresher. And I expected that card to be way higher. And I'm disappointed now that I was playing that card and picking it very highly. I will definitely move it slightly down in my pick orders. It's still good in red-green at 0.8, so fine. Like the 4th best uncommon in green for that archetype. But minus 0.6 in black-green, minus 0.8 in blue-green, minus 1.7 in white-green, that's not excellent at all. So I will still prioritize it in red-green, but outside of red-green, I will drop that priority a bit because, you know, this card you have to pick quite highly because, you know, everyone understands that 4 mana 5/4 with some upside is a good card. So I will probably start picking other cards to replace it. And, you know, let's try to give some context to that. Vanish from Sight in blue-green has plus 3.2, and this one has minus 0.8. So 4 percentage points differences between Vanish from Sight and Wickerfolk Thresher, I can get Vanish from side, pick 7, pick 8 or something, and Wickerfold Treasure I have to, pick 2, pick 3 to get it into my deck. Phew. Okay. Coordinated Clobbering. That's the removal for 1 green, but it's a bite spell, but you need to tap the creatures that are going to be biting, up to 2 of them, in order to cast it. It's better in red-green, minus 2.6. It's, again, another sorcery removal that is worse than Monstrous Emergence. And Monstrous Emergence was already lagging behind in red-green. So card is probably not for that deck. It's fine in white-green and black-green at 0.5 plus, roughly. And it's passable in blue-green at minus 1.2. So I wouldn't pick it early, but you can play it in those and move on with your life. Then we have Overgrown Zealot. That's the 0/4 for 2 mana. That's a mana dork. Gives you mana of any color. Acceptable in white-green and blue-green, 0.5, 0.0. Passable in black-green, minus 1.5. Minus 2.7 in red-green. That's not the plan that you want to be implementing. Very similar with House Cartographer. That's the 2/2. When it survives combat, you sort of cascade for land. That's the term that exists. Minus 0.7, minus 0.6 in the white, green, blue, green. So acceptable, passable in those. And minus 1.5, minus 1.7, black, green, red, green, sort of like filler in there. Not really something that you'll be looking for. Probably slightly better if you're playing 3-color versions of those decks. Altenac, that's an interesting card to look at. The Thrice Cold. That's the 7-mana 9/9 with trample, and whenever it becomes a target of a spell controlled by your opponent, you draw a card, and you can also summon it using say its name. You're saying its name, it arrives from wherever it is in your deck. Obviously, this card is powerful when it hits the board. It's a 9/9 with trample, hard to deal with, but my experience was that I always managed to deal with it somehow. I rarely died to it. I think it happened maybe a couple of times, but I've seen it more than a couple of times cast against me. And, it's a pain. They draw a card. It's solid, but, 7-mana creature, you would expect like a lot from that. It's actively good in black-green. Black-green is the best home also for Say Its Name. If you remember, it was much higher win rate in black-green than in other color combinations. So those things are probably linked. But it doesn't have great numbers in either white-green, blue-green, or red-green, between minus 1.6, minus 1.7, and minus 2.8. And the 0.1 plus in black-green is like really an outlier compared to the other archetypes. So I guess we can think of Altenac as a sort of secret multicolor card, black-green. And you will be much better for it if you start thinking like that. Cathartic Parting. That's the 2-mana sorcery. You shuffle an enchantment. Is it enchantment or artifact? I think enchantment or artifact, but chat will definitely correct me if I'm wrong. Into its owner's library, and also you can shuffle 4 cards from your own graveyard into the library. And this card is pretty bad in white, green, black, green, and red, green. But it does have only minus 0.8 in blue-green, which makes it playable according to my criteria-ish. And I think that the shuffling 4 cards into your library from your graveyard in this deck particularly is important, because this is the deck that probably lives on the edge of milling itself out the most. So that card is playable in there. And, if you can pick those late and you have space for some kind of very conditional removal that can also help you not die by putting 4 extra cards that are decent into your deck, then you definitely should play it. Fear of Exposure. I was way too high on that card in the previous season. That's the 3-mana 5/4. And when you cast it, you need to tap 2 lands or creatures as an additional cost. I thought that this card is going to be great, mainly because I thought, if you manifest Dread with it, you can flip it for 3 mana, you get a 5/4, which is fine. Turns out that's not enough. The cost of playing like 5 mana, 5 for vanilla creature is too high. So it got pretty bad numbers, like -2 in white green, which already is a weak color. I will repeat it until it reaches that understanding with you that what does it mean to compare different colors. -3 with blue green, -2.8 with black green, -4 with red green. Just not a great card. That's it. And last, but I wanted to say but not least, but it is the least, is Greenhouse Rickety Gazebo room. That's got like -10% in blue green and -5 in black green, and not even enough data in white green and red green. Just probably don't play that card unless you do a 5-color deck, which is not in this data. So okay, that is that for the green cards, but I decided to go a bit further and also do colorless cards. Because I think that some of those colorless cards can be interesting. I'm not going to go fully because lots of those are lands, but some of them are very important lands. So, okay, best colorless card in the set is Glimmerlight, the equipment. 2 mana, make a 1/1 Glimmer, equip for 1. It's a basically short sword. And it's good in almost every archetype. +1 in white blue, plus 0.6 in white black. So even in white black, it's decent. Plus 1.2 in white red, plus 0.4 in white green, plus 3.3 in blue black, plus 2 in blue red, plus 0.1, still plus in blue green, plus 2.2 in black red. Good sacrifice fodder that leaves something behind. Minus 0.7 in black green, minus 2.1 in red green. So these are the two archetypes where you probably should be more sparingly playing that card. Still in black green, it's fine, but in red green, minus 2.1 is probably too much. You can find better cards for that deck. But it's great everywhere else. It improves the win rate everywhere else, which is impressive in its own right. Okay, now here we have the Conductive Machete. That's the second best colorless card in the format. Also played in all 10 color combinations at a rate that is sufficient for it to have the win rate data. And here we have 4 color combinations where the card is not so great. White blue, white green, blue red, black red. And I think that these are the color combinations that are least reliant on delirium. I think that's the main reason, because black green and red green, they want delirium. The card is decent there, plus 0.4, plus 0.1. White black, as I said, wants anything that manifests red, and you got plus 1.9 there. White red 1.2 does a lot of small things in that deck, which is fine. Blue black, I still don't get why it's so good in there, but there we are. Maybe it's played in the more aggressive versions of blue black, which there are some of. And blue green, manifesting dread is what you want to be doing anyway, so it works fine in that deck. Plus 1.1. White blue artifact doesn't do much for it. Manifesting dread is not really beneficial. White green should probably have better 4-drops than this. Blue red is not very much on plan for what is this doing, and you can actually lose one of your valuable rooms to manifesting dread. So maybe not something that you want to be doing unless you're getting something good out of it. And black red, just again, you want to be maybe playing smaller things as a sacrifice fodder than this 4/3 that doesn't do much, and then you are left with this artifact. If you could sacrifice artifacts in this set, it would be great, but most of the time you can only sacrifice enchantments and creatures, so that doesn't work. Even more, you can see the impact of delirium on the win rates of Terramorphic Expanse, the evolving wilds of the set. It's got plus, not by much, in every single color combination, except for white blue, white black, blue black. Esper colors, just actively bad. Terramorphic Expanse at minus 2.6 percentage points. It's also slightly minus in blue green. because you don't have that much delirium there, and you're thinning your library, which is something that you probably are actually scared about and worried about. But minus 0.7 still means that you should be playing it in there. And it's like 0, 0.1, 0.6, 0.1, 0.2, 0.6. So slight improvement, which is great for a land. It means it's a really, really, really strong card in limited if you can have a land that improves your win rate. So yeah, definitely definitely something to look at. Then we have Lakeside Shack. That's the 2-color land, blue green. That one has fine in most of the decks. Surprisingly to me, not so great in black green and red green. I think that has something to do with you'd rather want to splash an island in those because you have the centipede most likely, and the centipede is good in those decks. So rather than having a dual land that you have to draw into and you can move with one of your manifest dreads, you probably want to be playing basic lands in those decks because you have ways of finding those basic lands, and you don't have a way of finding the Lakeside Shack. That's my hypothesis. It's obviously okay in blue-green. It's okay in blue-red as well. That manifests dread a bit less. White-green, it's okay. Again, you manifest dread less in that deck. Also, you don't probably focus on things that find you mana, so that's also fine. And white-blue, also the same situation. Then we have a Friendly Teddy. That's a bad card. End of the story. Murky Sewer, and that card has it's best of one data. Dingus Egg. It's best of one only. I didn't look at best of three because it adds extra complication for my analysis, and the data sizes are much smaller, so I can't even probably get all the commons for some color combinations. Okay, what else do we have? Murky Sewer may be of note. It has very good win rate in white-black, so splashing blue into your Reanimator deck might be good. I don't know exactly what you should be splashing, but maybe when we get more data, I can investigate a bit deeper in that. What else? Abandoned Campground. Again, fine in its own color, but it's also fine in blue-black, so maybe splashing white into blue-black is okay. And I think two interesting bits is that Etched Cornfield and Neglected Manor, so white-green and white and black lands, are decent in Golgari decks. So there might be some Abzan build of black-green that splashes white. It's not dominantly white, unlike in the previous sets where it was usually white-green splashing black or white-black splashing green. In this set, it seems that the winning formula is playing black-green and maybe splashing white. And again, I would need to do a bit more digging into which exactly cards are doing so much better in black-green. Maybe it's this black-green more reanimation kind of deck, which will splash the enter the cocoon. Is that enter the cocoon? The cocoon card, the 5-mana reanimator spell. Yeah, emerge from the cocoon. There you go. So that might be it, but of course it might be splashing some bombs that are also there. And Keys to the House, bad in almost every deck. I mean, no, they are bad in every deck. It's slightly less bad in blue-green. So that's the state of the colorless card. And again, Glimmerlight is just a very, very, very strong card. It's good in almost every deck, so worth picking it early. Maybe not over the cards that are like super important for your deck, and maybe not when you're in every lane, but it's a card that when you see it like pick 5, pick 6, you probably should be picking it every single time because it will always be fine in your deck. Okay, and then this is the rest of the of the cards. They are not played in every deck, so much less data. I found it super cute that Haunted Screen, the black and white TV that you have to pay life to make it colorful, is actually positive in its win rate in white-black. So that 1 damage can be seen in data to some extent. But jokes about it not having to pay life to get white and black mana aside, I think it's actively good in white-black, because ramping from 3 to 5, where most of your reanimation spells live, is not a bad thing. This deck is very mana hungry. It also wants to be casting 7 drops from mana, so ramping with Haunted Screen is a good thing for that deck. So Haunted Screen, you probably want to actively play in those decks. And the fact that it gives you white and black without any damage is gravy. And it's not responsible for the difference between its win rate of 0.4 plus in white black and minus 10 in minus 9.5 in white blue, or minus 8 in blue green. That's not what causes it. I think it sort of fits to the strategy of white black deck. I was recently thinking about, should reanimator decks be playing like 18 lands maybe, because you so much want to hit that 5th land in best of 1, and for that 18 lands is hugely beneficial. What else do we have here of interesting thing? Found Footage. That card has decent numbers in white-black, in black-green, and in red-green. That's the 1 mana artifact. You can sacrifice it for 2 mana and you surveil 2 and do something else. I even forgot what it does. I have to Google it. Found Footage, MTG. There we go. It's a clue. Yeah, so you sacrifice it. Yeah, it's a clue. You draw a card, surveil 2, and draw a card. Yeah, that's the important part. So this card is having really good numbers in white, black, and black, green, and red, green. Like minus 0.3 plus 0.8. That's absolutely fine. And I think that especially in black, green, I will definitely give it a spin and try to see how it works. Surveil 2 fuels your delirium. Drawing a card is not bad, and it puts an artifact naturally into your graveyard. So yeah, maybe this is the secret golden egg that we need to start playing a bit more. And the numbers suggest that it might be fine. Not great, but fine. And you have access to any number of that card when it's open in your opponent, because it goes pretty late. Some more lands, blah, 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 boring. Bear Trap, fine in black-green as well. And I think that putting that artifact into the graveyard, this is exactly what it wants. Plus 0.1, so like roughly on 0, which is, fine. I mean, Bear Trap is then better than a bunch of like green commons, and definitely better than a bunch of black commons, because only like 3 black commons are better than a Bear Trap, and it's Final Vengeance, Murder, and Winter's Intervention. Obviously, it's probably a small sample size for the Bear Trap compared to the other ones, but it's a small sample size that you should at least be aware of, and maybe start trying the Bear Trap in your deck, because when you think about it, 4 mana deal 3 damage in installments might be a good thing to have in this deck. Is it that much worse than 2 mana deal 2 in Winter's Intervention? Not that much. So yeah, I would start trying it out. And notably, Malevolent Chandelier, the 6 mana 4/4 flyer that can shuffle cards back into your library, has pretty bad numbers in both blue-green and black-green. But since some really strong players are swearing by the card, I would also don't discard completely as a strategy playing that card in your deck. Also, sad for me, Attack in the Box doesn't pack a punch, unfortunately, as I was hoping before the set was released. Yeah, only data in white, red, and minus 5.8. That's not good. And last thing for today, I still have more slides, but I can't physically do it. It's already 2 a.m. almost. Is the Signpost Uncommons. And generally, all of them are decent. Yeah, Isaiah, I'm also wondering, how good are those box decks with Balloon Man? I want to make that combo happen, and I never manage. Okay, let's look at the signpost uncommons going in my preferred order of wu, wub, wur, wug. So basically, keeping the first letter of Wooburg and then going in the Wooburg order with the second letter. Blue, white, and signposts. Gremlin Tamer is just excellent, and Inquisitive Glimmer is good. White, black signposts, they are only played in their own color pair, but not all of them will be as we go to the second half. Rite of the Moth, the reanimation spell is good in white, black. Shroud Stomper also good in white, black. Notably, Rite of the Moth was also played in black, green, but it has minus 1.8 there. So compared to 1.2, 1.0 in white, black. So splashing Rite of the Moth is not a good idea. If you want to go with this black-green reanimation, probably splashing Emerge is fine, and you should have enough in black with Valgavoth's Faithful and Live or Die. White-red just won the lottery of signpost uncommon. Both Arabella and Midnight Mayhem are just insanely good. Arabella +4, Midnight Mayhem +5, just carrying hard the whole archetype, which already is good. The opposite story is for the white green, where both Baseball Bat and Shrewd Storyteller are like -2 roughly. Bad. In blue black, Fear of Infinity, the 2/2 lifelinker that cannot block, +1.9, which is decent. Skullcap Nuisance, the 1/4 for 2 mana is just 0, which is okay, I guess, if you can pluck those late, and you should be if you're drafting blue black. Notably, Fear of Infinity, some people try to splash it in, quite some few people try to splash it in white blue because it's an enchantment and technically aggressive plan and whatnot. -5.1. No, just don't. Probably just like white blue doesn't want to play Terramorphic Expanses already, and if you're splashing, you're probably playing them. So and your good signpost uncommons are harder to cast, and they're both 2-drops. Like there's so many things that just work against splashing in white blue that you probably should just like refrain from doing that. Okay, blue red. Intruding Soul Ager is -1, which is barely playable in the bad color combination. Smoky Lounge, Misty Saloon, the room is 0.7, so fine, you can play it in your deck. It should be good in it. Blue-green, another color combination that got a pretty decent combo of signposts. Growing Dread +2, Oblivious Bookworm +5. I mean, card is great. Not only that, Oblivious Bookworm is also +5 in red-green as a splash. So in this teamwork kind of shell with the extra card selection while producing Delirium for you for free. Great. And you also actively play Centipedes, so having a blue, not a problem at all. So yeah, splashing Bookworm into red-green, again, especially in the light of what Alex was saying, that commons are not so important in this format, and what the data shows that commons are not so important in that format. Splashing Oblivious Bookworm in the red-green sounds like a great idea if you can get those late, and you're in red-green, and maybe you're thinking like, oh, I have too many commons in my deck. Boom. Bookworm, couple of islands, because you don't want just one, because manifesting is living on the edge. You don't want to mill your only island. And then you can improve your deck, and it's actively good in there. And black-green also +1, so it's fine to play that in black-green as well in a sort of Sultai shell. Black-red has very different signpost. Soulblade Skin Ripper is just basically a 0 card, so replacement level card, which is okay, but nothing to write home about. Disturbing Mirth, on the other hand, +5. That card is really good, and it's really something that can pull you into drafting black-red, because having a couple of those is just such a powerful combination. So yeah, I would not ignore that card when I see it late. As for black-green, Brute Spinner, just phenomenal, +5.3. So the biggest improvement of all the signposts and commons. But it's also great in blue-green and in red-green with plus 3.6, plus 3.9. So improving also those decks. Again, same situation as with Oblivious Bookworm and red-green. You can actively pick them when you're blue-green. You see Brute Spinner, oh, just pick it, and you will be able to splash it. You have green, so you'll probably play the Centipedes. Same with red-green. You have Centipedes, you can splash it. And it has googly eyes, as Flappagoon noticed, and that's something. If the spider that attacked me an hour ago, there will be a clip made out of that. If the spider that attacked me during the stream just an hour ago had googly eyes, I probably wouldn't have jumped and screamed like my daughter would. Drug to the Roots is significantly weaker than Brute Spinner, but still a very good card. Plus 2.5 in its own color combination, plus 2.1 in red-green, and plus 1.3 in blue-green. So absolutely fine, both as a card in your black-green deck or as a splash in those Sultai / Timur piles. And last, and definitely not least, we have the red-green cards. Beastie Beatdown and Wildfire Wickerfold, they only have data from their own color pair, but they're both excellent, plus 2.7, plus 4.3. Whew! That's been a lot of card talking. I mean, we went through every single common and uncommon in the set, giving it context in all 4 color combinations that the card can be, or even more in case of the multicolors. So hopefully you will pardon the extensive character of the set, and you will also pardon that I will not do the second part of the presentation that I prepared. Don't worry, I'm going to do it next week, so we can ignore that and move to the acknowledgements, where I will, as always, thank deeply to the 17 Lands team, because without them, that wouldn't be possible for me to do those things. So thanks to Viral Misnomer especially, who is losing sleep on trying to make the website run. You're an amazing person, and they definitely changed how Limited is being played, even if there are people are unhappy with it. I think that there will always be unhappy people. I think that the net benefit is quite positive. And also thanks to Fake Jake Brown, who is still uploading my podcast, probably for last time this time, and then I have to figure out how to do it myself. Damn it, how to edit. Ugh. Well, I'm entering the new waters of not having free helper, but I will forever be grateful to Fake Jake, and I wish him all the best in his new job, which stops him from being able to do free stuff for me, damn it. And with that, I'll see you next week when we'll be talking about the habits of top players with updated data from the second half of this presentation that I couldn't squeeze in because I didn't even realize how much data I have to talk about here.